Hi, welcome back to the channel. Today we are talking about half square triangles and how to make a lot of half square triangles very accurately and very quickly. So stick around as we go through the process for making these half square triangles today. So if you're working on a pattern and your pattern calls for many half square triangles that are the same size and potentially even using the same two fabric choices, then you have an opportunity to use the triangle on a roll paper that Fat Quarter Shop sells that allows you to make some very accurate half square triangles and make them in a method that makes a lot of them very quickly. So in this example, I have made 3-inch finished half square triangles. Finished meaning once they're sewn into a quilt, each block will be 3 inches. So right now they're 3.5-inch squares. If you're working on a quilt pattern and your pattern says to make a multiple half square triangles, you have maybe 50 to make or a large number of them to make, and the pattern tells you what size your block should be when it's completed. For instance, in this case, these blocks are currently 3.5-inch square, and once they're sewn into a quilt, they'll be 3-inch square. So if you know that, then you can look at the triangles on a roll, and this particular roll that I'm holding in my hand are for 7-inch finished blocks, and they go as large as 7-inch and as small as I believe 1.25-inch finished blocks, and they're in half-inch increments. And I have a couple of other examples here. This will make 1-inch finished half square triangles, and this one will make 2.5-inch finished half square triangles. All sorts of options there depending on the pattern you're working on. If you, on the other hand, want to make a quilt and you want half square triangles but you're not really using a pattern, you're doing your own quilt, then same thing. You pick the size that you want and then you can make these half square triangles, as many of them as you need. So let's look at how I made these and how the triangle paper on a roll works, and then you can see if this is something that you would be interested in doing. I have taken my 3-inch finished triangle paper and I've opened the roll, and you can see the roll there's quite a bit on a roll. I believe there's 50 feet of triangle paper on each roll, and what I did was I cut the triangle paper down. I cut a piece off. I knew that I wanted to make 16 half square triangles, so I know that this amount of triangle paper will make 16 blocks. So I cut that off of the larger roll, and I did that simply by cutting very carefully on the solid line across the piece of paper. So that's how I started, and you can see from this you can cut it down as small as something like this that would create 4 half square triangles. So you can cut it to the size you need depending on the number of blocks that you need. So I'm going to work with 16 half square triangles that will be 3.5 inches before they're quilted in, and then 3 inches once they're finished. So I start with the triangle paper that I've cut off the roll, and you can see, you might not be able to see in the camera, it says 3-inch finished block, so that's how I know which size I need. And it says cut fabric 8 inches wide by length to obtain the desired number of blocks. So I have taken 2 pieces of fabric and I have put them down right sides together, and they're a bit larger than the paper that I'm going to work with. And then I'm going to lay the paper on there, and I'm going to use some straight pins to pin this down so it doesn't shift while I'm sewing. And I try to pin where the pins won't be in the way of stitching. Looking at the paper, the dotted lines are your stitch lines, and the arrows are telling you to stitch in that direction on that dotted line from one side to the other. You don't have to go in the direction that it says, but the only thing you do need to stick to is stitching all of the dotted lines exactly as they appear on the paper, from the side all the way across. And then here it stops on a point, and then you take that and you go all the way down. So I will stitch this, I will take this over to the sewing machine and I will show you how we stitch this together. Okay, I hope you can see, looking at this paper, that we have stitched all of the perforated line, or all of the dash lines on this particular piece. I can take my pins out now. A couple of things to know when you're sewing these. One is the paper comes off easier. The paper comes off easier if you change your stitch length to 1.5 inches and you use a 90 needle, so that it creates holes in the paper, so that when you're ready to take this paper off, it comes off really easily. So let's use the cutter and a ruler and let's cut these apart, and we will work from there. So all of the solid lines on the paper get cut at this point. So let me, well, so you can see that I am going through and cutting all of the solid lines throughout the you can see I'm cutting out all of the solid lines. And these solid lines, like I said, are important because they are the lines that will give you an accurate cut. And as you can see here, I allowed my ruler to slip. So this is a half square triangle that won't be accurate, so I won't use this one in my quilt. So let's cut the rest of these though. I'll still end up with 15 half square triangles to work with here. So what I do to try to prevent my ruler sliding on the paper, because the paper tends to be a bit slippery, is to put medical tape. It's just medical tape from the drugstore on the back side of the ruler, and that helps to prevent some of the sliding, because your ruler may want to slide on the, like I said, on the paper more than it would try to slide on a piece of fabric. So let's cut these all down. And once I get these cut down, I will show you how to show you how to get the paper off of them. Okay. I like using this triangle paper when I want to create my own quilt with my own design. I'm not working from a pattern, but I have an idea, or I have some fabrics that I want to use, and I want to use the half square triangles to show off the fabric at its best. And if you've watched any of my videos, that's probably a common theme you've seen. I tend to like chances to make a quilt where I'm not really using someone else's pattern. I'm kind of creating mine as I go. Let's see, my rotary blade must be getting dull here. Okay. And when you're cutting the lines that are the lines that are just strictly between two seams, that's seam allowance, and that's not as critical that that's accurate, but these lines are critical because they do. So again, we used a 1.5 stitch length so that it would put the maximum number of holes in the paper so that it'd make it easier to pull that paper off when we're done with this. So 2 more cuts. And like I said, this one won't work for this project, but I'll show you how I will rescue it for a potential future project. Okay, so we've cut everything down. All right, so let's use this one since it's the one that's deformed. So if you take your paper and you fold it back along that seam line, and then hold your seam allowance, you can pull this paper and it'll pull pretty easily off. And then once you've pulled that off, the seam allowance paper comes off easy also. So that's how you take the paper off. And then take it over to the iron. Let me move these out of the way. Take this over to the iron and press it in however you want to press it for your own quilt pattern. So let me take a ruler here. I'm going to put this ruler on here, and I know this is now too short to be a 3.5 inch square, but I'm going to trim this down to 3 inches and use it on another project. I keep a bin of orphan blocks that I use in scrappy quilts later. So this will be a 3 inch half square triangle that I will save for another project. And if you've watched some of the other videos, you will see that I have done that. I have some flying geese. So this is a 3 inch square. It'll be 2.5 inch when it's finished and in the quilt. So I will hold on to this one for another project. Okay, so the next step is to pull the paper off of each one. Again, fold the paper back. You've used a 90 needle and you've used a 1.5 stitch length, so this paper comes off really easily. And then, as I said, you can take them over to the iron and iron them. And then the only other thing that you'll want to do is remove the dog ears, and then you have a finished block. So I will go through and remove these, 1 or 2 more. So you can see I hold the seam allowance and I pull this paper, and then I pull this seam allowance off, the paper off the seam allowance, and I take it to the iron and I press it. And usually I do this in a more of assembly line, and sometimes I will even take the half square triangles, make them all up into a pile, and then sit while watching TV or whatever and remove them all at one time. and then take them all to the iron at one time and iron them. But you can see it comes apart relatively easy. All right, and then we go back to the iron and we press it back. Okay, so all right, so let's take a look at some of the blocks that I have played with. These were the original blocks that I did, and this is, you know, a lot of different ways that you can do these. You can do them all in the same direction. I did this one. I like this look, and I think that this would make a really nice quilt, to line them all up in the same direction. So this is one option. So you can go through and play around with what you want. You can start with triangles on a roll of paper, and from there you can make your own designs. So let's play with this a little bit differently and see what we come up with. Let's say we turn these out on the four corners and we replace some of the squares with some solid blocks. So these are the blocks I had cut just so that I could play with this and see what other kinds of designs I could come up with. So here you can see, and then I thought I had another white piece to put in the middle, but I can take a blue piece and put that, and that's a design of block you could come up with. You could take these and turn these to the middle and do that. So there's all sorts of configurations. As you can see, triangle on a roll is a great way to make half square triangles, to make a lot of them at one time, and to make very accurate blocks. So I hope that this video helped you. I hope that you will pick up some of this and give it a try. If you decide to give triangles on a roll a chance, add your comments in the video to let me know how that worked out for you and what you thought of this as a method for making half square triangles. So if you liked the video, please smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification button so that you'll be notified as we add new videos.